Hey Fruit Faces, it's KlaireeBerry here to talk with you guys today about keto diet. I have a whole playlist devoted to keto and low carb, so there's going to be a lot more coming because I really think it's really detrimental. It's so popular right now. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's trying it. And it's funny, people will try it over and over again, even though it hasn't worked for them long term. They might lose 20 pounds right away, and then that is enough to keep them hooked for life, even though all they're doing is going back and forth. And it's obviously not very sustainable for them and not even working. So it kind of baffles my mind, the definition of insanity, trying the same thing over and over. But the fact that they lost those 20 pounds of water weight in the beginning of that 1 year or whatever, they think that that means that it works. And a lot of other reasons why they're going to keep going back to it. But we're going to talk today a little bit about the serum biomarkers. These are the, when you go and you get your blood drawn after you've been on keto or, whenever you get your blood drawn, these are the things that they're looking at. And some of the main things that we're talking about in relation to keto are, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar is a big one, things like this. And people think that because they're losing weight, which mostly a lot of times, again, fluid weight, people think that because of that and because they might go to the doctor and they say, look, your cholesterol went down, probably not cholesterol, more so on like blood pressure and blood sugars. A lot of people are saying, oh, look, blood sugars are better, so therefore I'm not pre-diabetic anymore. I'm not this and that. And so they think it's a good thing, and they think that that is absolute proof that the diet works. But let me just tell you straight up, keto has never been proven to reverse heart disease like the whole food plant-based diet has. Keto has never been proven to do anything to cancer. Maybe in a petri dish or maybe theoretically, but there's no, widespread studies that show that keto helps with cancer like the high. Only studies that show a real improvement in those, again, are the high carb, low fat vegan lifestyles and diets, actually reversing disease and not just the biomarkers. And a lot of people will inaccurately, a lot of keto people go around saying that because this study says that it lowers your blood sugars, that it's good for diabetes. That's a leap, and scientifically people need to know this, and that's why I'm doing this video. Your serum biomarkers can improve for vast majority of reasons, okay? If you get cancer and you can't eat anymore and you lose weight, bam, or any kind of sickness, say you get the flu for 2 weeks and you eat less, you go on a starvation diet, you go on a fast, you take drugs, you get hooked on cocaine, you don't eat a lot, guess what? Even though we all know that's completely unhealthy, your blood serum biomarkers are going to go down because you're stopping eating the diet that you've been on, which is probably, basically same number. Standard American diet is very similar actually to a keto diet. Like I said, fat is still really high in a standard American diet. And so when people go on keto, they're cutting out calories, and that calorie restriction or reduction alone is enough to improve your biomarkers. It doesn't have anything to do with keto or ketones or any of that stuff. So that is like the number one thing that I really want people to understand. Just because you're improving your biomarkers doesn't mean it's healthy. Cocaine is not healthy. Cancer is not healthy. The flu is not healthy. So it's kind of common sense when you look at it in that way. As I said, just because you have these biomarkers doesn't mean that you're reducing your risk of cancer or heart disease. And in some ways, like let's say you think you're reducing your risk in some areas, but your risk in other areas is going to go up. And the whole thing about insulin resistance, I really want to talk about this for a minute because, again, just because you're temporarily dropping your blood sugars does not mean that it's good for preventing diabetes or anything, because the underlying mechanism of diabetes has to do with insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance. And whenever you're eating meat, which is the most insulinogenic, meat and dairy and eggs are all more insulinogenic than everything that people think is insulinogenic. Like if you compare meat to even pasta and rice, meat is way more insulinogenic. It causes insulin resistance on an underlying level. And again, you don't get chronic diseases overnight. These are built up and it takes a long time. So yes, when you flood your system with sugars, of course your blood sugar is going to go down. I mean, that's common sense. But again, your insulin resistance is going to increase if you're eating a lot of meat. Over time, it's going to lead to diabetes and overweight regardless. And so I've got a lot of studies on KlaireeBerry.com, a lot of videos, again, a whole playlist on low carb, but the keto diet is associated with insulin resistance. Increased insulin resistance, which is the opposite of what you want. When your cells and your cell walls and your sugars, I mean, you're going to have sugars regardless because, of course, your body needs them, and you're going to create sugars, glucose out of, the fats and the proteins. You're still going to have this. They're not going to be able to get where they need to go. This is insulin resistance. The reason why they can't get to where they need to go, the reason why the sugars aren't getting to the cells is because of the fact that they're coated with fat, and it messes everything up when you have excess fat in your system. This is a little known fact, but diabetes journals, they're starting to realize this. It's kind of a slow methodology to get people out of their original thinking, because it is confusing at first when you're like, well, my blood sugars are going down, so doesn't that mean that my risk of diabetes is less? And people automatically associate sugars as causing diabetes, because when you eat sugar, you get high blood sugars. But as documented in numerous YouTube videos, a lot of people who eat high carb, low fat can eat massive meals. Mick the Vegan's done videos on this. Robbie, I forget what his name is, Robbie the Diabetic Vegan, and Durian Ryder have all done videos on this, where they're eating huge amounts of carbs, and because their bodies are used to it, because they don't have that fat blocking all of their clogging up their system basically, then they are able to efficiently utilize all of those carbs, and their insulin is able to do its job and take the sugars to the cells where it needs to go instead of being stuck in the bloodstream, because that's what is happening when the fat is blocking up the system. The sugars get backed up in the bloodstream. You have extremely high blood sugar, but again, if you don't have that excess fat, you are able to get those sugars to where they need to go. So that's kind of the big difference. And keto is really associated with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's associated with increase in respiratory diseases and colon cancer, increase in belly fat long-term, interesting, and reversal of weight loss long-term, arterial stiffness, neurological side effects, and of course, increased cardiovascular risk of problems. And of course, that is our number one killer. Robert Atkins died of heart attack, even though people try to deny it. See my video on that. He had heart disease, even if he didn't die of it. His medical records showed that. So it's one of those things, like, you may be losing weight short term, but that doesn't mean anything. You may be having a better blood lab, but those blood labs are not the end all be all when it comes to the creation of long-term disease. And more studies are going to come out, and it's just one of those things. You have to really delve into it. And I had to come to terms with this myself because it's confusing. And I've looked into it with an open mind. I've done a lot of research. Again, KlaireeBerry.com has tons of studies listed, more studies every week. Be sure and check those, and let me know if you have any specific questions about this, any studies you want to hear about. I will be doing a lot of keto videos because, again, I really think it's really detrimental, and it's just not good long-term at all. Heart disease, again, the number one killer by far, and then the second highest killer is stroke. So when you have, and these two are so closely related, they really should be one disease. So whenever you look at that, that is massively more. If you put those two together, massively more than any other disease. So you may be having a better blood lab on keto, but that doesn't mean that long term it's going to help you. Because there's been people that have died. The kids that are dying, a lot of kids that are raised on a keto diet are dying very, very, very early. And these are kids that are being monitored, by professionals for epilepsy and all of that stuff. And they're dying because of these risks. There's the one study I was just looking at that I just posted on KlaireeBerry.com. they had a selenium deficiency and these other, mechanisms that related to like a sudden cardiac death at a very young age while they're still children. This should not be happening. And just because it's good for one thing, just because it may be good for epilepsy, even though they don't know why it's good, and that's just a big red flag. If they don't know why it's good, then they really, yeah, I get it, epilepsy is bad, but heart disease worse, and maybe there needs to be a lot more studies on why it's good for epilepsy, because maybe there's a different way that we could go about figuring out, what needs to be done to help with that. It's not necessarily, have to do this whole keto diet. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Don't forget to eat your fruit. Let me know what you think. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Pinstagram. Pinterest, Instagram, and of course KlaireeBerry.com, and let me know what you think. And again, this also, I just want to add here at the end, this also correlates to people who feel good. There's a lot of people who are like, I feel great off keto. And again, when you're cutting out all those extra substances that honestly are really high fat, like cookies, cakes, muffins, chips, a lot of things we think of as high carb, but really have even more percentage of fat than they do carbs. You cut out those extra fats and extra calories, then yeah, you're going to lose weight. Yeah, you're going to feel better. Okay, and if you're eating a lot less refined carbs, yeah, you're going to feel better, especially if you're overweight and already have a really sluggish system. And if you already have a lot of fat clogging everything up, then, yeah, it's going to feel better to bring your blood sugars down. Obviously, it's going to, reducing your blood pressure temporarily, you're going to feel better, but that doesn't mean that it's going to last. It doesn't mean that you're really helping yourself. So, okay, I'll let you guys go now. Don't forget to stay tuned, stay subbed if you haven't already. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll talk to you soon.